Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Late Night Talk Episode 5. Alright, so I'm gonna be honest. Cowboys news it's a little dead. We're in the dead zone right now. But that isn't going to stop us from trying our absolute best to try to fish out for some topics. And what I really want, it's going to be relatively short tonight. Basically, we're going to, talk about, quarterbacks that and how the schedule is, looking. Dak Prescott is going to play 7 of the 10 highest paid quarterbacks in the league on the schedule. He has Joe Burrow, who is tied for first with Trevor Lawrence. He plays Jared Goff, who's at second with 53 million. He plays Lamar Jackson, who's at 52 million. He plays Jalen Hurts twice, who's at 51 million. He plays Deshaun Watson, who is at 44 million. And then he also plays Kirk Cousins, who's at 45 million. Actually, that don't even make sense. Hold up. That might be probably like 46 million more than likely. I might have saw that wrong because Kirk Cousins is below Deshaun Watson, but he's at 45 million. So that's got to be 46 million. That might be a 6 that I was seeing, not a 4. So yeah, because that don't even sound right. But yeah, and I want to go one by one and look at all 7 of the quarterbacks and, explain why or why not Dak will win that game. Starting off with Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott will, God willing, be facing, in week 14 of the season. All right, he will be facing Joe Burrow in week 14 of the season. And Joe Burrow is, of course, tied for being the highest paid. And he is the highest paid for good reason. You look at what he's done with that franchise, the Cincinnati Bengals. He went to he was the first overall pick, so he knew good and well that he was going to a bad team. And the fact of the matter is, the Bengals really, when you look at it, they really were just starting to get rolling, when he got hurt, and, it seems like that's become a little bit of a pattern for Joe Burrow when he does have a season-ending injury, is that it looks like the team is just starting to get things rolling. And then an injury that, just kind of, puts the Bengals season to a pit stop. So yeah, his rookie year, that's kind of what happened. He was very well on his way to probably winning Offensive Rookie of the Year, or at least, be in the argument, that's for sure. But he got hurt, of course, and tore his ACL, and it was very, questioning on whether or not he was going to be healthy enough to come back for the next season. And of course, the Bengals started digging a little bit. They started, being like, well, he's our franchise guy, and if we want to keep him around, we need to give this dude some help. And so in the off season, there was some people out there in free agency, and the Bengals, well, shoot, they started cooking. First, they went out and they got Von Bell, all right, safety for the Saints. They already had a standout safety in Jesse Bates III. And, Von Bell was just, of course, going to play, on the other side. And they would be like almost like you could say a backcourt duo, the backcourt duo of the NFL. So they got him. They signed a couple corners. They signed a couple corners in free agency, including Achita Awuzie from the Cowboys. And, they got, of course, like Eli Apple. They got Mike Hilton from the Steelers. So they got some people around Joe Burrow, and then they started to make moves. And then they've really been then now started to become an AFC power of what they've become today. And Joe Burrow has really flourished, and you marvel at what he does. And the funny thing is, Joe Burrow starts the season off slow, but then he seems to always hit his stride come November, and then December. And then if they get in the playoffs, then January Joe. So I think that's one of his nicknames, matter of fact. But either way, we know what he brings to the table. As long as he's healthy, that should definitely be a great matchup. A great matchup that I think Dak should be able to win. Just based off the fact that, I think Dak can definitely match Joe Burrow blow for blow in that game. If it does in fact become a shootout, Dak is very well more than capable of matching him touchdown for touchdown, point for point. He did it last year, of course, against Geno Smith and the Seahawks on Thursday night. Was one of the most draining games I've ever watched as a Cowboys fan. I mean, it was crazy. But yes, and Dak, of course, has been in his fair share of a few shootouts in his career, including probably the most famous one, the one that really got him the job as our quarterback his rookie season, was the one against Big Ben and the Steelers. So the fact of the matter is, this even goes back to his rookie year. His ability to prove that he can get into a shootout with all the best quarterbacks in the league. And Joe Burrow is very well one of them. And so I think Dak would be able to win that one if it does in fact become a shootout. I will say, as far as a team, wise, I do believe that our secondary matches up well with the Bengals receivers, because we have big, like long corners who can get physical at the line of scrimmage with receivers, and, just kind of knock them off balance a little bit on their routes. So our secondary really matches up well with Joe Burrow and his receivers. So that also helps when you can be able to contest passes. But, either way, I think that will be a win. And then you have Jared Goff. Now, early on, the Jared Goff versus Dak Prescott, the battle of two QBs in the 2016 draft class, one with obviously the much more higher upside than the other quarterback. But the fact of the matter is, early on, it looked like Jared Goff had Dak Prescott's number. I ain't gonna lie to y'all. Now, the funny thing is, it was really the game against Jared Goff and the LA Rams in the preseason, albeit. It was really that game that he slowly started to catch the eye of Cowboy fans, including Mark Holmes. It was really that game, that preseason game, that he really started to catch eyes of his potential and promise as a quarterback for us in the future. Little did we know that the very next week, man, future was now after Tony Romo's injury. Um, but yeah, they've had their fair share of battles, and in the early going, it looked like Jared Goff did in fact have Dak Prescott's number. They went up against each other a couple of times early on, and well, Jared Goff won each of them. One of them was a regular season game. It was a fun game too. And then the other one was a playoff game. Was a playoff game, of course. In 2018, one of the most forgotten Dallas Cowboy playoff chokes, but it's definitely one that it was the one that I felt like look, Dak Prescott, people need to stop, giving him so much grief the way they do, because Dak actually played very well in that game. And just like the loss to the Packers his rookie year in the playoffs, once again it was his defense that let him down. They allowed 250 yards rushing to the Rams that day. And I don't care it don't matter how good you are and whatever. You give up 250 yards rushing to anybody, I don't care who you are. It will make you look very ordinary. And all that talk that I was hearing and the hype around our defense that year, and D-Law nicknaming themselves the Hot Boys, I mean, all that was dead after that playoff game, man. I mean, it was embarrassing. But Dak did his thing. I mean, he played well. It was just his defense obviously, failed him in that game. But then they played each other the next year in the regular season, and Dak got his get back. And basically ever since, Dak has really, had, Jared Goff's number. Now, albeit they did play the very next year in the season opener in 2020 that had a little bit of drama at the end. We won't get into all of that though. That's a story for another day. But y'all know what happened. The phantom OPI call that the refs called on Michael Gallup at the end of that game. So, but that was unfortunately a loss where Dak came up short against Jared Goff. And then the next time they would play would be not until 2022, and Dak in his first game back from his thumb injury, and he basically took the game manager role in that game. He didn't do too much, but he didn't do anything to cost us, and just was on business. It was Jared Goff, on the other hand, who was forcing passes and turning the football over. And Dak won that game easily. And then, of course, we played them this past year, and you already know about the controversy and drama that ensued at the end of that game. And but again, Dak did his thing with over 300 yards, a pair of touchdowns, including the one that basically was the game winner to Brandon Cooks late in the fourth quarter. And then we had a little bit of drama at the end of the game, but fact of the matter is we still came out with the W. But so it's 3-3 right now between Jared Goff and Dak Prescott as far as their 6 matchups against one another. And I know what Jared Goff has, over there in Detroit with that offensive line and that run game, and, what they can do as far as his strengths. I think that Mike McCarthy with this offense, including with now the retooled and refixed offensive line, I think we absolutely match up well with the Detroit Lions. I mean, we obviously proved it and showed it last year when we faced them that we match up well against them. It's just a matter of, of course, how the defense is going to play. But I think that our offense should, I think Dak should very well have a field day in that game and be able to win. And then, of course, Lamar Jackson. And look, this will be the first time that Lamar Jackson and Dak Prescott ever play each other. Uh, the last time that they had a chance, and the only opportunity that they truly had a chance to play one another, was, of course, in 2020, but Dak was hurt. So that was the only opportunity that they had, but of course it didn't happen. So this will be their very first time playing against one another, and I'm really intrigued to see how that's going to go because remember, the MVP conversation and MVP votes that came down to the wire last year, of course, Lamar was first and Dak was second. This game is going to prove who really deserved MVP in that game. Now, albeit I will say that I'm gonna have to say that I think Dak will lose this one just because I think the Ravens do have an all-around better roster, better team against him. That defense is going to give Dak problems, and then I think Lamar will give our defense problems more than likely. We've proved that we couldn't contain him last time, and I don't know how much of a difference we're going to make this time to be able to contain him. Unless Micah Parsons just goes out there and plays like a man possessed. But either way, that's the only game that I, have that I don't think Dak will be able to win. Lamar, great dual threat quarterback, probably the best dual threat quarterback in the league, but that's, pretty much what it is. And then, of course, you have Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts, Dak has twice. And the fact of the matter is, Jalen Hurts had his, little fairy tale run in 2022, and unfortunately, his team squandered it. It wasn't totally him, albeit he did have that fumble in the first quarter, if I'm not mistaken. But other than that, he played flawless football. I really have not too many negatives to say about Jalen Hurts for that Super Bowl against the Chiefs. It's just where my complaint comes in is that was the only time they did it. You take that away, it's been wild card defeat to the Buccaneers both times. Maybe we just found Jalen Hurts' kryptonite, Todd Bowles, and his blitzing defense. But either way, I mean, look, the fact of the matter is that, Jalen Hurts, he called out about Kellen Moore that the offense is basically 95% new. So they're trying to learn almost a completely different offense, a completely brand new offense. So you would think that, just go look at film on what the offense that he ran with the Chargers last year or with the Cowboys for, 4 years. But no, the offense is Kellen Moore basically changed 95% of the offense, and they're trying to start from scratch right now. And that's not good for Jalen Hurts. So without a doubt, I think that Dak will definitely win that first game just because of the circumstances. I mean, they're probably gonna not still have it all figured out. And then even when we play them later on that season, I still think we'll be able to win because we might be able to, whatever flaws that we had in the first game, I think we'll be able to make some adjustments, including Mike Zimmer. Whatever flaws that we had in the first game, we'll be able to clean up and adjust to in the second game and play even better to win that game. So I have Dak beating Jalen Hurts twice. And then Deshaun Watson is the first game. And Deshaun Watson he just hasn't been able to recapture that magic and that magicianary tactics that he was creating back when he was in Houston. I think that the whole allegations and stuff with the masseuse and whatever back in 2021, I think it's really gotten to his head. And I don't know if he'll ever be the same. But, we'll see. But I think that it's really going to be, of course, more about Dak, trying to, put surgery on the Browns defense, which I don't think he'll do. I think he'll probably have his struggles because let's not forget that the Browns defense was the best in the league for most of the year last year. And a lot of those guys coming back, I mean, it's going to be maybe a little tough, especially for the first game of the year. And we got a couple rookie offensive linemen that are trying to get their feet wet in their debut game, Tyler Guyton and Cooper Beebe. And going up against Myles Garrett and that Browns pass rush with Jim Schwartz at the helm being their defensive coordinator is not easy. So, I mean, matter of fact, Dak Prescott has ran into some of his struggles with Jim Schwartz. He has, ran into a bit of his struggles with Jim Schwartz defense. Remember when he was coaching with Philadelphia, or when he was coaching in Philadelphia and early in Dak's career, he had a little bit of struggles against that Jim Schwartz defense. So we can't really forget that. But I think Dak is definitely a different quarterback than he was early in his career. It's not as easy to confuse him and fool him like it once was early in his career. Just not as easy to trick him, get into his head. I think he's a different quarterback than he was early in his career, so I expect him to play a little bit more sharper this time. So that should be a win. And then, of course, he plays Kirk Cousins in the middle of the season. And, I mean, I think that it's probably going to be a pretty easy game. I mean, don't get me wrong. Let's not underestimate. But I think it could very well be a very, very winnable game. Very winnable. The Falcons, I just don't know about their defense. Dak is going to carve it up. And then our defense, I mean, I said what I said, but they're still good enough to stop Kirk Cousins. I mean, Kirk Cousins, when he sees Micah Parsons, he gets a little spooked. Ever since Micah Parsons has been in the league and he's been playing him, Kirk Cousins has been getting a little spooked, going up against him. So, I mean, that should be a dub. So when you look at it and you look at the 7 matchups, Dak should go 6-1 against 7 of the 10 highest paid quarterbacks in the league. When you look at the schedule and look at how everything, falls, that should very well be the way, in my opinion and my thoughts on how it should definitely go. But to close, yeah, though Dak has 7 of the 10 highest paid quarterbacks in the league on the schedule, and I do believe that he'll go 6-1 against him. Of course, I mean, you know, things do happen, but I'm just saying, as far as what I see, this should definitely, more than likely be the outcome of these games. And I believe that that is exactly what should happen. So let me know how y'all feel about this, about some of my opinions and, little, mentions and stuff, and all of that for each of those quarterbacks one by one. Let me know how y'all feel about that, and my picks out of those 7 quarterbacks. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. To all my audience, to all of Cowboys Nation, this is Late Night Talk, episode 5, and we are out.